The flashing red and blue lights of the state trooper vehicles cast a sickening, rhythmic glow across the damp asphalt of the suburban street. It was exactly 4:15 in the morning, and the air carried the sharp, acrid stench of burning rubber, melted plastic, and spilled engine fluids. I stood on the curb in my slippers, my hands trembling violently inside the pockets of my coat as I stared at the smoking, unrecognizable mountain of twisted steel resting against a concrete utility pole. Only 12 hours earlier, that wreckage had been a pristine, midnight black luxury SUV, a masterpiece of automotive engineering that had cost me exactly $98,000. It was the first and only truly extravagant thing I had ever bought for myself, a tangible trophy representing 10 years of agonizing corporate sacrifices and absolute independence from my family. Now, the front engine block was pushed entirely into the passenger cabin, the frame was violently warped, and the interior airbags were deflated and stained with gray soot. The primary state trooper on the scene walked toward me, his heavy combat boots crunching loudly on the scattered fragments of broken safety glass littering the pavement. "Are you Rachel Moore?" he asked, his voice low and clinical as he looked down at his digital notepad. "We traced the vehicle registration directly to your name." I nodded slowly, my voice catching in my throat as a wave of profound, suffocating heartbreak washed over my chest. "Yes, it's my car. What happened?" The trooper sighed, tilting his hat back slightly as he gestured toward the tow truck crew beginning to hook heavy chains onto the ruined axle of my SUV. The driver lost control while navigating the sharp curve at the bottom of the hill, traveling at nearly twice the legal speed limit before colliding head-on with the concrete structure. The driver and the passenger fled the scene on foot immediately after the impact, but we found a trail of abandoned luggage and luxury merchandise scattered across the ditch, he explained. I stared at him in absolute bewilderment, because less than 5 hours ago, my vehicle keys had been sitting safely on the wooden bowl inside my private entryway. The freezing realization hit me like a physical blow to the stomach. Someone had quietly walked into my home at 3 in the morning, stolen my keys while I slept, and completely demolished my life's pride. To understand the raw, volatile nature of the anger that began to harden beneath my grief, you have to understand the parasitic ecosystem of the Moore household. For as long as my memory stretched, I was treated not as a daughter to be cherished, but as a financial safety net meant to fund my family's desperate delusions of high society grandeur. My mother, Eleanor, was a woman consumed by an insatiable need for social status, a toxic vanity that far outpaced my father's modest income as a local warehouse manager. They lived in a perpetual cloud of high-interest credit card debt, personal loan defaults, and frantic financial juggling just to maintain the illusion of wealth among their country club peers. When I graduated with honors and secured a highly lucrative partner position at a forensic accounting and compliance firm in the city, their entitlement became absolute. They didn't celebrate my brilliant career or ask about the toll the 80-hour workweeks were taking on my health. They simply treated my clean credit profile as a communal asset. My younger sister, Chloe, was my mother's ultimate creation, a beautifully manicured, deeply entitled 22-year-old who had been trained to believe that hard work was entirely beneath her dignity. While I was spending my 20s locked in windowless corporate offices auditing tax fraud records, Chloe was floating through life on a heavy cushion of luxury allowances that my parents routinely guilt me into co-signing. When I finally drew an unbreakable boundary, refusing to co-sign another single luxury vehicle lease for Chloe, my mother wept hysterically and branded me as a cold, ungrateful monster. I bought the $98,000 SUV with my own private signing bonus, an ironclad statement that my hard work belonged exclusively to me and my future. They hated that car from the exact moment I parked it in the driveway, viewing its flawless, glossy paint as a daily, visible reminder of the control they had completely lost over my life. As I walked back up the driveway of my parents' home, where I had been temporarily staying while my new downtown apartment was finishing renovations, the front door quietly creaked open. I hurried up the wooden steps, expecting to find my parents in a state of frantic panic over the sirens that had been echoing through the neighborhood for the last hour. Instead, I walked into the dim light of the hallway and found my mother standing there in her expensive silk bathrobe, her expression chillingly composed, almost mechanical. "Where is Chloe, Mother?" I demanded, my voice raw, shaking with an unstable mixture of grief and rising suspicion. "Someone stole my keys at 3 a.m. and completely totaled my car down the hill." Eleanor didn't gasp, and she didn't look surprised. She simply took a slow, deliberate sip from a mug of tea, her eyes narrowing as she looked at me with an icy calculation. "Keep your voice down, Rachel. There is absolutely no need to bring that hysterical corporate drama into this house so early in the morning," she said, her tone smooth and entirely dismissive. "Chloe is currently resting in her bedroom with a severe migraine, and I suggest you go to your room and prepare to handle this situation like a mature, compliant member of this family." A sudden, dangerous intuition flashed through my analytical mind, prompting me to push past her shoulder and storm down the narrow hallway toward Chloe's bedroom door. I threw the door open and found my younger sister sitting on the edge of her mattress, her manicured hands shaking violently as she attempted to scrub dark grass stains from her designer sneakers. Her forehead was heavily bruised, her expensive clothes were torn, and the distinct scent of high-end, imported leather and expensive French perfume filled the entire space. "It was you," I whispered, the white-hot anger rising in my throat as I stared at the physical evidence of her guilt. "You took my keys while I was asleep. You destroyed my car." Before Chloe could even open her mouth to offer a frantic lie, my mother stepped into the bedroom, closing the door firmly behind her and locking it with a sharp, definitive click. She stood directly between me and my sister, her face hardening into a mask of pure, unyielding authority as she prepared to deploy the ultimate family manipulation. "Yes, Chloe took the vehicle, Rachel, and she did it under my direct, explicit command," Eleanor stated, her voice entirely devoid of remorse or shame. "I needed a heavy, high-security vehicle with tinted windows to execute a critical transport for my boutique business, and your SUV was the only asset that fit the requirements." The words hit me like a physical shockwave, and a massive, dark criminal plot twist began to unfold before my eyes with terrifying, undeniable clarity. My mother had spent the last 2 years running what she claimed was a high-end, exclusive clothing and accessory boutique from a rented studio downtown. In reality, her boutique was an elaborate, illegal multi-layered smuggling ring designed to traffic counterfeit and illegally imported luxury merchandise past international customs borders. She had been sourcing thousands of dollars worth of untaxed, smuggled designer handbags, rare watches, and exotic jewelry pieces from corrupt shipping channels at the local shipping ports. She was selling these smuggled goods under the table to her wealthy high-society acquaintances, clearing hundreds of thousands of dollars in pure, untaxed cash while filing fraudulent bankruptcy records. But weeks earlier, a local federal task force had initiated a massive crackdown on illegal maritime cargo, forcing my mother's primary port contact to panic and dump the latest shipment early. The high-value cargo had been left at a vulnerable, remote storage facility hours away, and the lead whistleblowers had given my mother a strict midnight deadline to clear the evidence out of the area. Eleanor had realized that her own small sedan would look immediately suspicious to local highway patrols, and she couldn't risk renting a commercial van that would leave a digital paper trail. She had looked at my $98,000 luxury SUV not as a daughter's hard-earned achievement, but as the perfect, invisible armor to transport her illegal, black-market cargo. She had forced a terrified, inexperienced Chloe to take my keys in the dead of night, drive out to the remote facility, and load the vehicle to the ceiling with over $200,000 worth of smuggled merchandise. But Chloe's complete lack of driving discipline and the sheer weight of the illegal cargo had proved to be a fatal combination on the slick, rain-soaked country roads. When Chloe lost control and slammed into the concrete utility pole, the impact had ruptured the heavy cardboard boxes in the cargo bay, scattering the smuggled luxury items across the public ditch. In a blind, frantic panic, Chloe had called our mother from the roadside, and Eleanor had driven out in her own car to pull her favorite daughter from the wreckage, leaving my totaled SUV behind like garbage. They had managed to throw a fraction of the high-value merchandise into Eleanor's trunk before the state troopers arrived, but the rest of the illegal cargo was currently being cataloged by forensic units down the hill. The sheer, disgusting depravity of their choices settled deep into my chest, completely freezing the final remnants of any maternal affection I had left for the woman standing before me. "You committed a federal crime using my property, Mother," I said, my voice smooth, chillingly calm and entirely level as I stared her down. "You put your own daughter in a vehicle she couldn't handle to traffic smuggled goods. And now my car is completely destroyed, the police are tracking the cargo, and you are standing here acting like you have the right to look down on me." Eleanor stepped closer, her painted nails digging violently into the fabric of my coat sleeves, her face twisting into a desperate, aggressive glare. "Listen to me very carefully, Rachel," she hissed, her breath smelling strongly of herbal tea and panic. "This is where your fancy corporate accounting degree actually becomes useful to this family. When the insurance investigators and the state troopers call you for your official statement later this morning, you are going to tell them exactly what I dictate to you. You are going to tell them that you were the one driving the vehicle at 3 in the morning, that you swerved to avoid a deer, and that the boxes in the back belonged to a private corporate client from your firm. If you commit this simple, federal insurance fraud for us, the insurance company will completely pay off the $98,000 loss, the police will stop digging into the cargo origin, and our family name will remain pristine. If you refuse, if you play the part of the arrogant, self-righteous whistleblower, your sister will face immediate felony reckless driving and leaving the scene of an accident charges. And your father and I will lose the house when the state audits my boutique records and finds the tax discrepancies. You are a member of this bloodline, Rachel, and you are obligated to protect us." I looked at her, searching her cold, desperate features for any shred of real maternal love or genuine remorse for the absolute wreckage they had caused to my life. I found absolutely nothing but the same narcissistic, predatory entitlement that had drained my energy and happiness for over a decade. They had spent 27 years training me to swallow my own boundaries, to accept their emotional abuse, and to sacrifice my hard work just to shield them from the reality of their choices. They truly believed that my typical quiet compliance and fear of family conflict would force me to sign my name away on a fraudulent federal insurance document. "I see," I whispered softly, taking a slow, deep breath as I gently but firmly removed her fingers from my sleeves. "I need to go down to the kitchen and clear my head before the investigators arrive." Eleanor smiled, a smug, triumphant expression spreading across her face as she mistakenly took my calm demeanor for absolute surrender and total submission. "That's my good, sensible girl," she murmured, patting my shoulder with a false warmth that made my skin crawl. "I knew you'd realize that family loyalty always comes before an expensive piece of metal." As I walked down the stairs into the quiet, dark kitchen, a profound, dangerous peace settled deep into my soul, completely erasing any remaining hesitation. I didn't waste a single second crying over the family that had just tried to draft me into a federal criminal conspiracy. Instead, I pulled my smartphone from my pocket and logged into my private secure cloud servers. When I bought that $98,000 SUV, I hadn't just invested in luxury leather and a powerful engine. I had personally installed an elite, multi-layered security infrastructure. The vehicle was equipped with a front and rear dual-lens 4K dashcam network that recorded continuously on a closed, hardwired power loop, syncing automatically to an encrypted cloud server via an embedded cellular modem. Furthermore, because of my extensive professional work in corporate risk mitigation, I had activated the vehicle's advanced telematic black box data tracker. I sat at the kitchen table, my fingers moving across the screen with a cold, professional precision as I opened the automated cloud folder timed between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. The crystal-clear audio and video files downloaded instantly, providing an undeniable, cinematic record of the exact moment my family's reality would completely collapse. The front cabin footage showed my mother, Eleanor, explicitly handed my stolen car keys to a crying, hesitant Chloe inside our dark garage at precisely 3:15 in the morning. The audio captured Eleanor's voice clearly, commanding Chloe to drive fast, ignore the speed monitors, and make sure every single box of smuggled luxury goods was loaded securely into the back. The secondary files contained the real-time GPS and black box telematics data, documenting the exact moment the vehicle accelerated recklessly down the wet hill, followed by the terrifying, violent impact with the concrete structure. It showed Chloe screaming in terror as the front frame buckled, followed by the footage of Eleanor's sedan pulling up minutes later to hurriedly scramble through the wreckage for the highest-value smuggled items. I bound the entire digital package, the 4K video files, the unedited audio tracks, the black box speed telemetry, and the historical tax fraud data I had quietly archived regarding her boutique, into an unbreakable, encrypted legal folder. I didn't wait for the insurance field investigators to call my phone, and I didn't give my mother another single opportunity to corner me with her weaponized tears. I walked out of the front door into the chilly morning air, got into a rideshare vehicle I had quietly summoned, and drove directly to the Regional State Trooper Command headquarters downtown. I walked into the secure briefing room, my posture completely upright, my expression entirely serene as I sat down before the lead crash investigator and 2 state fraud detectives. I didn't offer an emotional speech, and I didn't cry about the destruction of my property. I simply placed my tablet on the metal table and pushed the folder across the space between us. This is the complete, unedited forensic reality of the vehicle crash that occurred on my street this morning, I stated, my voice echoing clearly through the quiet room. My vehicle was stolen while I slept, used without my consent to traffic illegally smuggled black market merchandise, and my family has spent the last hour demanding I commit federal insurance fraud to cover up their enterprise. The lead detective opened the files, his eyes widening in absolute, breathless shock as the 4K video played across the screen, my mother's clear voice explicitly detailing the criminal conspiracy out loud. This isn't a standard traffic incident anymore, Ms. Moore, the detective said, looking up at me with an expression of intense professional respect and grave gravity. This is a multi-layered federal smuggling operation and premeditated identity theft caught with absolute, ironclad proof. We will initiate the immediate asset seizures and arrest warrants before the afternoon is over, he added, closing the folder with a heavy, definitive snap. I walked out of the state trooper headquarters as the morning sun began to break through the gray autumn clouds, knowing that the house of cards my family had built on a foundation of pure cruelty was about to face a total collapse. The devastating domino effect descended upon the Moore household at precisely 2 o'clock that afternoon with the unstoppable, crushing force of a natural law. A convoy of marked state trooper vehicles and federal fraud units arrived at my parents' suburban home, executing immediate arrest warrants and corporate asset search orders. The neighbors gathered on the manicured sidewalks, watching in absolute, breathless fascination as my arrogant mother was led down the front steps in heavy steel handcuffs, her face pale with terror. Chloe followed behind her, weeping hysterically as she was processed for felony, leaving the scene of an accident, grand theft of an automotive asset, and reckless driving. Simultaneously, the National Insurance Underwriting Agency issued an official, total denial of the $98,000 property damage claim. Because the unassailable cloud data proved the vehicle had been destroyed during the execution of a major, premeditated felony smuggling operation orchestrated by the resident family members, the policy was declared completely null and void. The ultimate layer of the human karma slammed into my parents' finances like a physical sledgehammer, stripping away the final remnants of their unearned pride. The insurance company didn't pay a single penny of the loss, leaving my family entirely, unilaterally liable for the remaining $98,000 commercial vehicle loan. Because the federal government immediately froze my mother's secret boutique accounts and initiated bank foreclosure proceedings to reclaim the unpaid luxury import taxes, they had absolutely no access to capital. My father was forced to liquidate his entire warehouse retirement portfolio and place a secondary, predatory mortgage on their home just to prevent Chloe from spending her 20s in a maximum security prison cell. The artificially funded, luxury lifestyle they had used to look down on me for over a decade vanished entirely overnight, replaced by the suffocating weight of an inescapable debt. They tried to launch a desperate, weaponized counteroffensive, using my father to bomb my professional phone lines with dozens of frantic, weeping voicemails at all hours of the night. "Rachel, how could you do this to your own mother?" My father's voice screamed through the digital transcripts, his tone completely stripped of his old, distant authority. "Your sister is facing years of probation, your mother is facing federal smuggling and tax evasion charges, and we are going to lose the house because of your cold, ungrateful heart. We are drowning in legal bills, we had to sell the luxury car for scrap, and your mother has to work a low-wage cleaning job in her 60s just to help us cover the interest payments on your car loan. You have plenty of money from your forensic accounting firm, Rachel. Why do you have to ruin your own bloodline over a piece of moving metal? Please drop the civil affidavits. We are begging you." I listened to his cries while sitting on the balcony of my brand-new, sun-filled downtown apartment, looking out at the glittering lights of the city's skyline in absolute peace. I didn't feel a single flash of malicious joy, and I didn't waste a single second writing long, defensive paragraphs trying to make them understand the depth of their betrayal. True liberation means reaching a psychological place where the burning panic of your abusers carries exactly zero weight over your self-worth. Their sudden, frantic appeals to family loyalty weren't born out of a genuine realization of the emotional manipulation they had inflicted upon me during my childhood. They were born out of a primitive, desperate terror over the sudden loss of the quiet financial safety net they had spent a lifetime exploiting for their own vanity. They didn't miss their eldest daughter. They missed the clean credit score and the submissive compliance that had allowed them to live beyond their means without ever paying the price. 2 years passed in a beautiful, uninterrupted current of pure professional triumph, immense corporate success, and an unshakable personal serenity. I built a highly respected corporate consultation firm in my new city, surrounded myself with intelligent, genuine colleagues who valued my character, and learned the true luxury of a quiet home. My new apartment featured massive floor-to-ceiling glass windows that looked out over a peaceful park filled with ancient maple trees and wild, fresh lavender. There were no narcissistic mothers sneaking into my bedroom to steal my keys, and there were no entitled sisters treating my hard work like a disposable resource for their pride. The final closure of my past arrived on a crisp autumn afternoon when a certified legal package was delivered to my office from the compliance firm handling the final restructuring of my parents' estate. My parents had been forced to officially sell their suburban home to satisfy the remaining balance of the $98,000 loan liability, moving into a tiny, rented apartment near the industrial rail yards. Attached to the standard legal disclosures was a short, crumpled note written by my mother from her kitchen table, her handwriting shaky and completely stripped of its old, arrogant flourish. "I work 10 hours a day on my knees scrubbing floors now, Rachel," the note read, her bitter words trying one final time to pierce my armor. "Your sister's reputation is permanently ruined, your father's health is failing from the stress of the warehouse shifts, and we have to live in a place where the trains shake the walls every single night. I hope your cold, corporate revenge was worth what you did to this family." I held the small piece of paper over the wastebasket, letting it slip from my fingers without a single beat of hesitation, regret, or emotional weight. The absolute destruction of their household hadn't been caused by my cold revenge. It was simply the natural, mathematical harvest of the bitter seeds they had planted over a lifetime of cruelty. They had spent 27 years sacrificing the innocent child to feed the insatiable greed of the golden child, and they were finally being forced to live in the silent, empty desert of their own creation. I walked over to the large glass windows of my beautiful living room, watching the autumn leaves dance in the cool city wind, a profound, permanent sense of serenity settling deep into my heart. If you are listening to this story right now, and you are the child whose silence and hard work have been exploited by the parasites who share your last name, I want you to hear me clearly. Your value is not defined by the absolute blindness of the people who were supposed to protect your heart and your shared future. Strength does not mean enduring financial fraud, emotional manipulation, or criminal exploitation for the sake of a fake family peace that only serves the thieves in your life. True power is born the exact moment you stop begging for the validation of people who are blind to your worth, and you begin to use your own brilliant mind to establish unbreakable boundaries. My financial victory was a beautiful, flawless execution of corporate compliance strategy that permanently shielded my hard work from the hands of criminals. But the true victory, the one that allowed me to look into the mirror every single morning with a peaceful, confident smile, was the freedom of knowing that I am more than enough. Home is not a geographic structure defined by a shared surname, a genetic code, or the toxic obligation to bleed for people who treat your existence like an inconvenience. Home is where your boundaries are treated as absolute, where your hard work is genuinely honored, and above all else, home is where you are respected.